2023 case. And what it talks about, it's a Brutin issue. And it's the U.S. Supreme Court just came out with the newest Brutin case last year. And the issue in Brutin is what used to happen is the court, and I'm very familiar with the court's background, the court probably knows all this, but it used to be a limiting instruction. So a person gives a statement, there's a limiting instruction. And then the court said, yes, jurors are presumed to follow the court's instruction, and jurors under oath are deemed or presumed to follow the rules. But the court said, you know, sometimes it's just too much. So what happened then is Brutin became the rule that now we're going to redact any mention, direct mention, it could be influential, but any direct mention of another person on trial from the non-testifying co-indictee on trial's statement. So, testimonial statement. And here, that was my struggle the whole time. It's not as simple as this statement can only be used against a person, because this is deliberation time. And it's an overt act. Mr. Ryan's case that the court is entertaining right now and permitting to go forward is an overt act. And what you're going to say, I believe, is that if the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt that an individual, I'll just use Mr. Williams, willfully and knowingly joined a conspiracy with others, one or more, then all of the conduct of anyone in that conspiracy can be used against Mr. Williams. But here, you're going to have to, and that was my struggle, say, but not this overt act. So this overt act gets separated. And I know I've asked, and I believe the court is entertaining separate verdict forms for everyone. So that will assist. I understand you could remove that overt act from a verdict form. But it's the deliberation. So the jurors presumably go back and deliberate. I'm just using Mr. Ryan's name because it's on the issue here. And they're talking about what's going on now in these several days of testimony. And then they're going to hear potentially the jury verdict. And then the jurors will be deliberating Mr. Williams and say, God forbid, he's part of the conspiracy. And then somebody is going to have to say, but now we can't use that verdict of that other jury, so let's erase that from our blackboard or our notes or deliberations. And I think that that gets complicated. Then you're going to have the same issue with Mr. Kendrick. And, Your Honor, the predecessor judge denied our objections to this evidence, gave no limiting instruction, said he would deal with that later. He understood it was an issue, but deal with it later. And Mr. Stilwell's guilty plea, or pleas, I believe that there are several, have come in without any type of instruction yet. So that is going to have to be dealt with. And Mr. Nichols has at least one guilty plea, maybe more, but I believe one guilty plea. That has come in the same way over the objection of timely objection, and the predecessor court stated that it would be dealt with later. So I don't believe at this point in time where we are, I tried my best. I did this several times. I gave you what I think is fair to everyone. I tried to be fair to Mr. Ryan and Mr. Kendrick in the instruction, but I don't believe, like in Brutin, I believe at some point it's just asking too much. So my objection is to admit the evidence since we're in a joint trial. Now, typically it's a severance. Severance would do it away, but you know, that's in the breast of this honorable court, but I'm not looking for a severance. I mean, personally, I'm just telling, I don't want to leave this jury right now. That's my issue.
Okay, so one you sent me, and I appreciate that, is about Mr. Kendrick's guilty, oh, I see,
I merged them, and I understand it's now
same.
Mr. Ryan, so you're going to have to, if you like it or use any part of it, you're going to have to flip it.
Okay.
But I just gave both.
All right, and when do we expect, if it comes in, the trial conviction of Mr. Ryan to come in?
Your Honor, it may come in today, but if the court will permit, I'd like to also address something that I just heard said that I think is important with respect to the use of these overt acts against the other defendants. There's nothing in the law that supports the proscription on the use of those overt acts. In other words, like I said earlier, if it's an overt act that has been committed by someone else, there's nothing, even if it's a co-defendant who's not testifying.
But, I mean, I think the problem there is our confrontation clause problem. How do you get around that?
Your Honor, the same way, and we did also submit to the court a brief.
Well, I haven't gotten any of what you submitted. I don't know where it is in the ether, but maybe y'all could send that again.
Okay, we submitted a brief on overt acts. And
That I do have, yes.
okay, and that partially is addressed here, but previously, with respect to the confrontation clause, in the same way that when we dealt with a statement given to the police by a non-testifying co-defendant, Your Honor, the courts have been clear that a limiting instruction is what is necessary. So if we are approving.
That's a whole lot different, though, than, I mean, I hear you saying that the fact of Mr. Ryan's conviction of murder is something that can be introduced against and used against as an overt act. All of these co-defendants, despite the fact that as to them, they weren't parties at that trial and so never got to cross-examine any of the evidence that is what resulted in Mr. Ryan's conviction. So how do you get around, that's a clear confrontation clause issue. How do you get around that and just be able to say, oh yeah, no, that can be considered against them as well in this trial?
Your Honor, I guess I would analogize it to, say, for instance, the posting by, I'll use, for instance, Diamante Kendrick of his picture saying Maniac is back on January 10th after Donovan Thomas is killed, right? So no one can cross-examine can cross-examine Diamante Kendrick.
But that's a statement by a co-conspirator.
Or the statement that Diamante Kendrick gave the police, or the statement that Shannon Stillwell gave the police, or any other piece of evidence. The point that I'm making is that evidence that is used to prove an overt act, which does not even have to be a crime. So
I understand that. Let's not go down that. Let's focus on the issues at hand.
Evidence that is used to prove an overt act can be used against, in this case, under 803.22 or 24.803.22 can be used against Mr. Ryan, can be attributed to him.
Sure. No, nobody, I don't think, disputes that.
Right.
That it can be used against Mr. Ryan.
Right.
I thought you were saying you think it can be used against everybody else, despite the fact that it's a conviction. If used to prove anything against anybody other than the person convicted, is testimonial, and therefore presents us with a confrontation clause issue.
No, what I was saying was that it constitutes an overt act committed by Mr. Ryan. And an overt act does not have to be committed by.
I know, but how are you getting around confrontation clause?
Because it's not, there's nothing for either of them to confront. It's an act that was committed by, if we use nothing else.
No. Okay, so if you just, in this trial, reprove that he committed murder, although then the jury has to make that determination, then sure, that evidence, everybody gets to confront whatever evidence you present here. It can be used against everybody. If you say, here's a certified copy of Mr. Ryan's jury trial conviction for murder, none of the other co-defendants got to confront the evidence that resulted in that conviction. So that's what makes it testimonial. It's here's the conviction. Here is this fact. It is established. And no one got to confront that, other than Mr. Ryan, of course. So it's not, it's the conviction, it's the, here's another jury saying this is a fact. So if you don't use that, then whatever you use to prove it here, sure, that can be used against everybody, because they all get to confront your evidence here in this trial where they are parties. Do you see the difference?
Your Honor, I do.
Okay.
To a very large extent, and I'm in line with the court for the most part. I'm having a problem, and I hope that the court forgives me for that. With that last portion, the idea that it's a piece of evidence that they can't confront, and therefore the whole act can't be used against.
It's a finding by another jury of fact that they haven't been able to confront. So
if I,
how do you get around the confrontation clause issue? Yes, sir. And
I'm sorry.
is somebody going to send me what you proposed as a limiter?
I'll send it again because I
Okay.
And I apologize. I know I walked in.
Okay, it came through. Thank you. Yep. All right.
I just want
Yes,
to make
sir.
sure I'm hearing the court correctly, so we're all on the same page. So as it relates to the certified conviction, the limiting instruction would just relate to just that. But the evidence that we've presented here in court as it relates to the murder that Mr. Ryan and Mr. Blaylock were convicted of, the evidence that's been presented here in court today, we can argue that as it relates to all the defendants, correct?
That would be my position.
Okay.
I mean, don't know that anybody can argue against that. Now's your chance.
Well, I would like to.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, so yes, that is, everybody accepts that as the law, even if they don't like it.
And so, Your Honor, if much in the same way that there is a piece, for instance, someone admitted that they committed a crime, like Mr. Kendrick admitted that he and Mr. Arnold were going to go retaliate against a rival gang member. Say that piece, that fact is something that they cannot confront, but the overt act that they actually were going to go committed, that we show evidence of, all of that evidence is admissible against everyone. But Mr. Kendrick's statement, which they cannot confront, which is establishing a fact that goes to prove this overt act, they cannot confront it. And the courts have held that even in a conspiracy case, under those circumstances, that statement can be used with the limiting instruction. That's why I began with the fact that it's analogous.
Okay, so I think we're all generally on the same page about that. It's what does the limiting instruction need to say?
That's what I.
All right, so, yes.
I'm not on the same page.
Are you on the same page with what I'm saying?
This is a little different in my mind. I thought I was on the same page, but that last statement, I'm not on the
Well,
same
you
page.
know, that's not the issue we're facing anyway, so it doesn't really matter whether we're on the same page about that. Are you on the same page? I mean, what I have said so far, do you agree that that's the law?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the difference is, and I think Mr. Steele articulated this as well, is when you have a guilty plea that deals with an overt act, that is a little different than a statement as part of the overt act, and it makes the ability to draft a limiting instruction that is workable exponentially higher.
I agree.
Okay, all right.
I agree. That's why I've been asking y'all basically since I took over this case to come up with something so
Right.
that we could have something to work on. But of course, I'm getting it the day that the evidence is coming in, which frankly, it is not going to be able to come in before lunch because I'm not going to have time to sit and try to
Judge,
put it
that's-
all together before lunch.
And
So,
Your Honor, if I
okay.
may,
Yeah.
we don't have to even introduce that today. We can introduce that whenever the court tells us that, we've had enough time to litigate it.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right, with regard to the Wooney Lee evidence, were y'all able to sort out the rest of that? I don't know if there was anything left over from last night. I think maybe there were a couple of things you were still looking at.
Yes, Your Honor. So I need, and what I was going to do right now is send, there's a 10-page PDF that the state has whittled down
Okay,
the Instagram threads that they would be intended on using. And so I think this should be able to be emailed to all parties. So I'm going to send it to everyone right now. And if someone's email doesn't receive it, just let me know.
okay. So I'm looking now at the state's proposed limiting instruction, which is basically just like a version of our pattern limiter for things. And it's not particularly helpful because it doesn't address any of the nuances. So if there's any way y'all could beef that up to try to address the nuances of what it is we're dealing with, I would appreciate that. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, Judge. I spoke with Mr. Atkins yesterday with regard to some of the Wooney Lee Instagrams,
Okay.
and I don't know whether that was part of what he proposed to send everybody. Mr. Atkins?
Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Harvey's correct. This has came up before where there's a Instagram handle that is, I believe, SLAT QUA.
Okay.
And so Mr. Harvey was indicating that if that portion, which it is included, that thread in the reduced Wooney Lee Instagram, if that were to get introduced to discuss, to not either a stipulation or something for the jury that, to the state's knowledge, does not believe.
Well, that's fine. Do y'all have a
It is in
stipulation,
reference.
or will you have a stipulation by the time it comes in, if it's going to come in?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to, and I think I'd have time to
Okay.
speak with Mr. Harvey and also probably Mr. Matthews about that.
All right,
That's right.
great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I do have some objections to some of the Wooney Lee exhibits. Specifically, there's two. There's a picture of my client wearing a trench coat, a denim trench coat, and it's a post, presumably by, yes, OG Bull is the post is under, and it says, "Ain't none more compatible than a trench, a carbon, while in the trenches," and then some hashtags, Freequay, NSLB, 2Bs, life size, and it says booking riches on the way. I get that these are allegedly my client's statements. They're statements by a party opponent to deal with the hearsay issues. However, in my time trying cases, the way I've always thought of it is if there's a picture, say, and there's no picture of a gun here, but I'm just using that as an analogy. If there's a picture of a gun with my client on social media, which there's no pictures of guns with Shannon, you would have to tie it to a specific crime. Otherwise, it's just bad character evidence, would have limited probative value, and it would be excluded, presumably, or my argument would be excluded under 403. This is from September 18th, 2020. My client's charged with a murder in 2015. He's charged with a murder in 2022. So this is not close in time to any acts of violence that my client's alleged to have committed. And I acknowledge that ain't none more compatible than a trench, a carbon, while in the trenches could be viewed as a reference to a firearm. I'm not denying that. But what's the purpose, and is it anything more than just bad character evidence that suggests my client's around firearms? I just don't see any connection to any of the allegations in this case. So that's the first objection.
All right.
And then I have one more.
What's the state's response? In what item of evidence is that?
It is in the Dropbox. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Actington. If you could help me out on that, what folder it's in.
I am pulling that up right now, Your Honor, to orient both defense counsel in the court. It should be in the two drop boxes where evidence for Wooney Lee was sent was the co-conspirator larger drop box and also the witnesses 31 through
The
60.
one that says Wooney Lee social media. Is this Instagram or what is this?
I believe it's believe it's in the Viverito folder, perhaps in the Jamari Holmes case.
Does somebody want to just put it on Zoom for me? That might be easier.
Yes, Your Honor. I will log into Zoom.
Okay, and then I'll need to hear the state's response. I need to log into Zoom also.
Yes, Your Honor.
Or no, I'm already
I'm gonna,
there.
if the court permits, pull it up first and then.
Sure. Is it Instagram or what is it?
I believe it's the Instagram. I should be clear, Your Honor. This is, it is an overact listed in the indictment, but from my perspective, that doesn't change the analysis. Just because the state alleges is an overact, if they allege an overact, a post that would fail 403 analysis, I don't believe that automatically makes it admissible, just because they chose to plead it that way. They don't get to plead their way out of the rules of evidence.
Your Honor, it is Act 115. Overt acts do not have to be crimes in and of themselves. I am
Betty knows that.
pulling up the Zoom now, Your Honor. So, Your Honor, if the court likes, the state can make argument whether the state feels that, whether this is an overt act or not an overt act. Oh,
Hang on.
sorry, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Whether this post furthers the conspiracy or not is what the parties respectfully will be arguing to the jury. And so when and if this Instagram post gets admitted, the state has to connect it and prove to the jury that it's an overt act in terms of the conspiracy, and defense counsel, of course, can cross and argue that it's not. And so the state doesn't feel that, the state at this time, unless this court wants more argument, feels that overt acts do not have to be crimes. This is Act 115. The state is alleging that this public Instagram post referencing firearms, he says in the trenches, but having firearms is something that is an overt act of the conspiracy.
All right, I'm going to overrule the 403 objection on that. What's the next one?
Make sure that I preserve an 801D2E with regard, an 801D2E objection with regard to that particular statement.
All right, well, that's overruled as well, but preserved.
Thank you.
The other one, Your Honor, is it's a verse from a song performed, a very good song by my client, and it was, and this has been litigated, full disclosure, but I just want Your Honor to understand the argument because it was litigated in front of the prior Judge, Mr. Stillwell in his song says, "I beat a murder rap." He was on bond. He had requested a speedy trial. There was all sorts of things. He ends up on bond. It's been years since he's been arrested. He says, "I beat a murder rap, paid my lawyer 30 for that." I don't know how much he paid. It wasn't me. But somehow, when we litigated it before, "I beat a murder rap" was deemed an admission. Like, I don't know. I've asked a lot of people this. When you say "I beat a murder rap," and universally, I figured maybe it's just me that I'm analyzing it wrong. Universally, everyone said to me, "No, it just means you were charged and you beat it. It's not saying that you did it and
Yeah, I agree
you
with
beat
that.
it."
I think.
Well, I don't know how that's an admission.
Okay, well, the jury hadn't been told it's an admission, have they?
Well, why is it admissible then? If it's not an admission, it's just a song saying, I was arrested.
It's an admission in evidentiary terms, like an admission by a party opponent. It is not, I would not view it necessarily as an admission that I committed murder and then got away with it. But that's not what we mean evidentially when we say it's admissible under the rules of evidence as an admission. It's an admission by a party opponent, which it is that. So.
Except when we've been dealing with lyrics, and these are lyrics, we've been cognizant of First Amendment.
Yes, and
Right.
everybody gets a right to say whatever they want, within the bounds of the First Amendment. But if that is also something that might be able to incriminate them in some manner, then, that's the choice they made.
Okay. Well, I would just like to reiterate my objection under relevance in 403 because
All right,
historically saying I was arrested and I beat it, I just don't see the relevance of that. But I understand the court's ruling.
Okay. What else?
That's all.
Okay. So was there a second Wooney Lee item?
Your Honor, I think we just addressed at least the two that Mr. Sharp.
Okay, there weren't any that Mr. Ryan had
well,
issue with.
I will not speak for, they may have issue with the reduced, I just sent to the parties
He just sent it.
the.
5
that-
minutes ago.
It's so that they may have objections to what the state wants to.
All right, when are we
fund
going to be
that.
getting to it?
I personally think he would come up tomorrow. He could technically come up today, Your Honor.
Okay, so look at it over the lunch hour,
Yes, Your Honor.
or now, if you can, but, all right, let's just make sure that we circle back on that before.
And yes, we will have objections.
Okay,
It's only 10 pages though, so it shouldn't take too long.
all right, are we ready for the jury then? No? We have a juror who is late, but should be here very shortly.
I think also, Judge, there were 2 additions to the state's.
Oh, yes, thank you. So there were a couple of witnesses that y'all were asking not to be shown. And those are additional witnesses, right? Let me find my.
Your Honor, we
witness list.
addressed the court, we addressed, Mr. Harvey and myself were at the bench, the 3 witnesses the state had requested.
Right.
And so I believe that in terms of who should be shown,
Y'all sent an email, last night? Asking, this was Ms. Hilton about last name Coppage and last name Henderson
That's correct, Judge.
not be filmed?
That was sent.
With respect.
So they're both on the witness list already
They
for
are.
this week. You're just asking consideration be given that they also not be filmed.
Yes, Your Honor. And I don't believe that either of those witnesses will be I know they won't be before lunch. They may not be before the end of today. As a matter of fact, there's a 99% chance they won't be before the end of today.
Okay, and y'all all have the email, right, that provides the rationale?
Yes, Your Honor, we do have the email.
Anybody gonna object to them not being filmed?
Well, I'm going to generally object. However, I'd like to get some clarification from the prosecution regarding the coppage from the information that was presented in the
All right, why
email.
don't we do that at the bench?
Okay.
Y'all come on up. All right, I have. Who are we waiting on? Mr. Steele. Okay. All right.
No, I was going to, but I'm not. She said she's not going to. Okay.
Do we have everybody now? All right, I think we've got somebody for everybody now. All right, in the few minutes that we had the recess, I have been taking a very preliminary first stab at the jury instruction that Mr. Steele begrudgingly provided the court to work on. And I am going to send that to Ms. Persifield to email out to all of y'all. And I would like for anybody who wants to, including, I'm going to require the state to take a look at the jury instruction as preliminarily modified by the court from Mr. Steele and really try to work on the nuance of what it is that the jury needs to understand. And I'm not sure that, okay. Mr. Steele, your instruction was going to tell the jury you can't consider either the guilty plea of Mr. Kendrick or the jury conviction of Mr. Ryan in any way in determining whether anybody else is guilty, basically, of the RICO count. And so that's the difficult part that we need to parse out and be able to explain well, because this is evidence that Mr. Kendrick committed that particular overt act, and it is evidence that Mr. Ryan committed that particular overt act. That's a fact. How that can be used, if at all, in considering anybody else's RICO count is what we need to be specific and correct in explaining to the jury. And so I need y'all to take a look at, what it is right now and try to get that crystallized for me.
Your Honor, when the court asked me to make it more specific and nuanced, that's what I was sitting here working on. So if the court wants me to not work individually and work from the one that the court sent,
I mean, I'll send it to you. If you find it to be helpful, work on that. If you want to send yours separately as well, and that's great. And I'll just try to take the best of all of them and put it all together. But I'd really appreciate y'all's assistance on those. And believe me, this is not anywhere near in final form. it's just what I had a chance to do in the last few minutes. All right, I think we are ready for the jury, so
Can I
if we
make
want
one-
to, huh?
Oh, I
Yes.
apologize, Miss.
No, go ahead.
No. Ms. Abbasi stood up.
If Your Honor will allow, I will be asking at some portion to have a few minutes just to speak with a potential witness of the state. He did not appear yesterday because he was in custody. He's brought over today, and the sheriff's office is trying to locate him, so I've not had access to him.
Okay,
I will
okay.
only need a few minutes.
Okay. What's our order going to be after Ms. Smith?
Your Honor, I think that it would be about the third witness down
Okay.
that Ms.
All right,
Abbasi
just-
wants to speak to.
Kind of let me know, and hopefully that'll align with one of our breaks anyway. Okay, so reminder that this next witness, Ms. Smith, is not to be filmed, and y'all be careful when you focus on the video boards too. So let's get her in, and then we'll get the jury in.
Your Honor, can I
I'm
just make
sorry,
one
wait,
more?
I'm sorry, Mr. Steele, you had something also.
Just for your hopeful put on your thought process, I also believe, though, that Mr. Kendrick's guilty plea to the gang involvement, he
Right.
pled to a gang count, that's what we're dealing with now. Mr. Kendrick and Mr. Williams are indicted in counts, I'm going to tell you 56, 57, 58.
Right.
I may be wrong on the numbers, together. And that guilty plea, it's not only for the RICO overt act, but it also goes to those counts too, because I don't want the jurors to use, well, Mr. Kendrick admitted through a guilty plea that he was part of a criminal street gang, YSL. So that has to be
Did he actually
incorporated.
admit it was YSL?
Yes, that's part of
They're
the
gonna
issue.
know that from what they get presented?
I don't think, we did not list YSL in the indictment, on that previous indictment.
Right.
I think you did.
No,
have to
I
check
just
it.
looked at the indictment. It doesn't say YSL in the indictment. that
Okay,
he
well, that's
pled.
better. I did not.
Okay.
Memory's different, but if you looked, then I'm wrong, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just looked like 2 seconds ago, so it's not. It may be in the guilty plea transcript, but that's not going to them anyway. Okay, let's get the witness and then the jury. We can be doing both at the same time.
All right, for the jury.
Or if it does both.
Good morning, Ms. Smith. Okay. So yesterday on Direct, you said that you used to hang out at Bolly's house? Excuse me? Yesterday on Direct, you said you used to hang out at Bolly's house? Correct. And you used to hang out on the 3rd floor?
It
I
was
think you-
everywhere, all over the house.
Okay, so you used to hang out on the bottom floor, the main
All
house?
over the house.
And so it's a 3-story house?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay. And there's a door on the 3rd floor, right?
I'm not sure. I really don't remember.
Okay. The mom walked out of the door when she was on the 3rd floor?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Okay. So you testified on direct that when you went outside that night, you got into BJ's car, right?
Correct.
And then he drove you, Tahira, Red, Jamari across the street?
Yes.
Because Tahira told you that there's a weed man over there?
Yes.
And then when the car stopped, Tahira got out the car to go buy some weed?
Yes.
And then she came back and got you and told you somebody wants to talk to you.
Correct.
And you're not familiar with that area.
No, I'm
You
not.
don't know anybody there.
No, I don't.
So you got out the car to go talk to somebody who you don't know in an unfamiliar area?
Yes, because I was scared. I didn't know what was finna go on.
And then that's when you say you saw Lil Rod and Bali running and shooting, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to approach you with what was previously marked as States Exhibit 11, November. Your Honor, may I approach? You may. You recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
So I'm going to hand you a copy of this exhibit. Here you go. And we're going to mark it as Defense Exhibit 1RR. I'm going to leave this with you. And I want you to mark where you saw Lil Rod with an R. Use the sticker and write an R and put it on the blue copy. And then I want you to get another sticker and mark where you saw Bali with a B, using the sticker. And then with the third sticker, I want you to mark where the charger was stopped with a C. I'm gonna get that from you, okay? Oh, use the sticker.
Write it on there.
Right, write the letters on the sticker. And then can you also put an M where you were hiding in the bushes?
The bush is right there. You can see it.
Can you put the sticker on there? And I'll move to I'll move to admit this as Defense Exhibit 1, Romeo into evidence.
It's admitted.
So now we're going to move on to your police interview after you were picked up, okay? Now, on direct yesterday, you said that you and BJ were friends, right?
I knew him, yeah.
Since 5th grade?
Yeah.
And you also told the detective that BJ put a gun to your head that night, correct?
Yes.
And you told so many other stories that the detective asked you if you knew the difference between a truth and a lie.
Yes.
In the first couple of hours of that interview, you kept saying that there was one shooter, true?
Yes, I did.
You said BJ was shooting, correct?
Yes, I did. I said a couple stuff. I was shook up. I was scared. I didn't know what to say. I never been in no situation like that before.
Okay. And then towards the end of the police interview, Detective Hogan told you what he thought happened, right?
Correct.
And then after Detective Casey told you, this is the time for you to sing your ass off, because if not, you're gonna find your ass in fucking jail with these fools, right?
Correct.
And that's when you started adopting Detective Hogan's version that there were two shooters.
Yes.
And then that's when you started saying that there was a big gun.
It's never no big guy.
Big gun.
A big gun? Mm-hmm. I don't remember.
And that's when you started putting Lil Rod in your story, correct?
Yes.
So let's fast forward to the previous hearing in September of 2021 when you provided testimony, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time anybody ever heard about you being trapped on this bottom floor, correct?
No.
Who'd you tell?
I told the police.
You told Detective Hogan?
No, I told the police when they came to get me, where I was, inside the house.
So you told them on the way to the police station that you were trapped in a house?
No, I told my mom over the phone.
You
That's
told
how
your
the-
mother?
Yes, that's how the police knew where I was.
Okay. And did Detective Hogan bring that up during your interview?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
So would it refresh your memory to look at your prior testimony from your prior hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may. That looks like a pretty big binder. Are you going to point her to something in particular? Okay.
I guess.
All right.
I'm not gonna have her flipping ring. Yeah, no.
That's good.
No. Okay. Would you go to page 866? And then to yourself, read lines 6 through 13
To myself?
to yourself. And when you're done reading, you can just close the book or just look up, so I know that you're done.
I looked at it.
Did that refresh your memory?
Yes, it do.
So you never told anybody that you were trapped in that basement?
Yes, I did. I told you I told my mom.
Okay. And yesterday was the first time anybody heard about Bali attacking you, correct?
Correct.
You kept that secret for about, 2019, 20, 21, 22, like 5, 6 years?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that you changed your past testimony several times about who had a gun that night?
No.
Okay. Would it refresh your memory to look at the transcript?
I mean, if you want to put it up, that's cool. I'll look at it and refresh my memory if that's what you want to do.
Okay, so let's start with where you said Lil Rod had a gun. Go to page 809.
Can y'all approach for just a second?
Did that refresh your memory? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said Lil Rod had a gun, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's go to, sorry. And you said that several times that he had a gun, right?
Both of them had guns.
Okay. But then you also testified you didn't see anybody shooting that night, correct? You have to
Correct.
say it for the record.
Yes.
Okay. And you also testified that you didn't see any guns that night, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then also, while you were on that bottom floor, you just found a random phone?
Yeah, it was a phone at the house.
And there wasn't a passcode to get in the phone?
I don't remember, but I could call somebody, so apparently it wasn't.
But you didn't call 911 to let them know that you were trapped in this basement?
Nope, I called my grandma and my mom first. And by the time I called my mom, 911 was at her house.
And when you were on the phone with your grandmother and your mother, you told them, I just saw a shooting?
No, when I called my mama was yelling and screaming, telling me homicide at her door.
Court's indulgence. Questions, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, are there other defense attorneys with questions for this witness?
May I retrieve my?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, is there redirect?
Very briefly, Judge.
Sure.
Good morning, Ms. Smith.
Good morning.
So, on cross, do you remember the defense counsel asking you about when you told the detectives at the beginning, when you started your interview, that you didn't see any guns or anybody shooting? Remember asking that question?
Yes, I lied a couple times.
Okay. Can you tell the jury?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, is that better? Oh.
Not really. You may either have to pick it up or use the lapel mic.
All right, so let me start over. So do you remember defense counsel asking you on cross a few minutes ago, about at the beginning of your interview with the detectives, that you said that you didn't see anybody shooting and you didn't see any guns. Do you remember her asking you that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the jurors why you said that at the beginning part of your interview when you were speaking with Detective Hogan and Detective Casey?
The reason I lied a couple of times was because I was shook up. I never been in no situation like that.
And can you tell the jurors or explain to them, when you say you were shook up, why were you so shook up?
Because, like, I was still around him. Like, During the situation, after they did what they did, I was still with them. I couldn't go nowhere until the police came.
When you say them, are you talking about Lil Rod, Valley, or Blaylock?
Yes,
And your friend, Ms. Brazy?
yes.
And were you shook up because Ms. Brazy had set you and Jamari?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Were you shook up because Ms. Brazy had set you and the people in the blue Charger up?
Yes.
And did you know anything about the fact that she was going to do that?
No, I didn't.
All that mic closer to you, Mr. Body.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Now, Ms. Williams asked you, or she phrased her question after Detective Hogan told you something that you just adopted it. Is that what you did when you were speaking with the detective and you decided to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And were you telling the truth, or were you just telling the detective exactly what he said?
I mean, I was telling some bit of the truth, but I was still lying.
Okay. And when you told the detective that you saw Little Rod and Bally run up and start shooting at the Charger, were you telling the truth?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury, based on, you said you had known BJ since, what, 5th grade?
Mm-hmm.
And in your interactions with BJ and Red and Jamari, can you tell the jurors, were they all pretty close friends?
I never knew
Speculation. Yesterday she said she didn't know.
Overruled.
I don't. I knew BJ. I didn't know the rest of them.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask my question again, maybe be a little more clear. You remember you talked about yesterday, you got into the Charger, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you were in the Charger, did you kind of witness and talk with and interact with BJ, Jamari, and Red in the car?
I can't really remember. I just know I was in the car with them.
Okay, and
But I know me and BJ had a conversation like about getting weed or whatever like that.
okay, and during the conversation and while you were in the car, was everybody interacting with each other, you know, in a friendly way?
I mean, I really don't remember, to be honest.
Okay,
I just know the whole time Brazy was talking, leading him to the apartments. That's it.
and that's okay. Do you remember also during your interview with Detective Hogan, he asked you, we talked about it yesterday, but he asked you about BJ's Instagram handle or user ID. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember what you told Detective Hogan BJ's Instagram user ID was?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jury?
I don't remember like exactly the name I told him, but I told him a name.
Okay, do you remember telling him a name?
I do, but I don't.
Okay. Do you remember telling him that his Instagram handle was for Lil Joker?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I just have a few more questions. So when defense counsel asked you some additional questions about, as Detective Hogan and Detective Tracy were talking to you about what happened, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and Ms. Williams asked you about whether you were just saying things because they had said it to you. Do you remember her asking you that?
Could you say it another way?
Let me ask you this. When you told Detective Hogan and Detective Tracy that you saw Little Rod and Bally shooting, was that because you saw it, or is that because they gave you some impression that they knew that they...
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
I actually saw it because for one, they never got in the car with us to know where we was going. For two, when we ran through the breezeway, I saw them shooting their guns at the car, literally.
And my last question is, back when this occurred, back in February of 2019, can you tell the jurors, how old were you back then?
I don't remember.
How old are you now again?
23.
Okay, and this was roughly 5 years ago? Yes? Mm-hmm. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, any recross?
Just one, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Did Lil Rod have the big gun?
I don't remember. I just know they both had guns.
That's it, thank you.
All right.
Can I go use the restroom, please?
It's not going to be much longer. Hang on just
Okay.
a second. I mean, no, is it something that came up in the redirect or recross?
Came up in the cross. And it also came up in direct.
Well, if it came up in direct, then you should have asked to cross. Go ahead.
Just I have just one or two questions for you.
Okay.
So BJ, that's the gentleman that you'd known for 5th grade or whatever, right? Okay. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. BJ threatened you, right? BJ, and then after that threat was made, then your house was shot up. Is that right? Afterwards.
I really can't remember.
Okay. So you don't remember the threat, then the house getting shot?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Does the state have anything based on that?
No, Judge.
All right. Thank you. You are excused. You can go ahead and you're free to go. Call your next witness. Yes. and which witness is going to take which amount of time, et cetera, who can get here when. So I think we're going to take our morning break right now. And then I know we hadn't been here very long today, but we're going to go ahead and take our morning break, and then we'll get back with some more witness testimony. All right, we'll take our recess, and Misty Williams and Miss Abbasi, they'll arrange for you to be able to speak with that witness or witnesses, and obviously anybody else that needs to as well.
And just so everybody knows, so the court is aware, that was a great suggestion by the court. We're gonna get Mr. Hiles down here. Mr. Hiles will be next, and that will allow the sheriff's department to get everyone they need situated for the two people who are staying with them, and then we can move forward that way.
Okay. But I'd like for them to be able to go ahead and, if they can, talk to those two witnesses during this break.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, great. Mr. Hiles is ready to walk in?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get the jury out.
No. That's going to be,
And your witness can be making his way in as well.
yes, Your Honor.
Oh, what was the answer about whether y'all were going to be calling anybody on the 1 through 50 list besides Arnold? Do you know?
Your Honor,
It may be that Mr. Abadi looked at that.
may I, or can we give the court an answer?
Sure,
Like
after
that?
lunch, yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. And Mr. Hiles, you can be making your way to the witness stand while they get situated. Thank you.
All jury present, come forward.
Thank you. Can you swear our next witness?
Right hand, you swear firm testimony to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Absolutely. You state and spell your first and last name.
My first name is Reeves, R-I-V-E-S. My last name is Hiles, H-I-L-E-S.
Good morning, Mr. Hiles. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Can you tell the jury where you work?
So I am currently employed as a Chief Senior Assistant DA at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, and I am currently assigned to the gang unit.
Can you give the jury a brief overview of when you came to work for the DA's office?
Yes, so I started working at the DA's office in August of 2017, and then in November of 2018, I was moved to the gang unit. I have more or less been in the gang unit since then, outside of an 8-month window where I was assigned to some special projects and some courtroom coverage in the domestic violence unit.
And briefly, what do you do currently in the gang unit?
I'm assigned 4 different courtrooms, and so I handle the gang cases that are randomly assigned to those particular courtrooms after indictment. But I also work closely with the local law enforcement agencies to maintain current knowledge on criminal street gangs that we prosecute. I assist with investigations, reviewing social media records, reviewing phone extractions, really both participating in the investigation and also making prosecutorial decisions whether or not to proceed with certain cases.
You had mentioned social media. Can you tell the jury what experience you've had working with social media records?
Yes, so especially ever since I got to the gang unit, the social media has been an invaluable tool, especially when it comes to gang prosecution as far as evidentiary value because of both the...
I'm going to object to what's an invaluable tool.
Sustained.
Can you describe for the jury what experience you have reviewing social media records?
So my experience is oftentimes social media records are obtained as part of the investigation, and these records are oftentimes voluminous, and so I would navigate through all of the media that is obtained in those social media returns, and it's kept in a very different order than it would be displayed to a user interface for these social media platforms, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, or any of the others.
And specifically with reviewing social media records, in your experience, have you ever had to request additional social media records once you have been reviewing a case or working on a case, after law enforcement gave it to the DA's office?
Yes, so it's very common for our office to request additional information. Oftentimes, the Instagram original returns are a very small window around the dates of a crime. And when we review those Instagram records, oftentimes we find evidence of other crimes or patterns of crimes, and so we expand.
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. I was not. So, Mr. Howes, can you tell the jury?
It's very common to find probable cause to get.
All right, that's irrelevant, frankly.
Your Honor,
Let's get to the point.
Yes, Your Honor. I was not trying to elicit that.
I know you weren't,
Yes, Your
but
Honor. Mr. Howes, can you describe for the jury? I want to talk specifically about Instagram. Do you have familiarity with Instagram?
Yes.
And ballpark, how many Instagram records have you reviewed in your time working in the district attorney's office on any type of case?
I would say over 300 returns plus. It's hard to put a ballpark on it, but it's very common.
Now, in general, and did I cut you off?
No.
In general, in case there's any jurors who may not know, can you describe in general Instagram and what kind of applications are on it for users of that social media? Just a brief overview of Instagram itself.
Okay. So yes, so Instagram is obviously a social media app. You can post pictures, you can direct message for communications, you can post different stories. So everything that's posted on Instagram is kept by, I guess now it would be Meta, the parent company, and is digitally stored. And it will be stored until it is either deleted or if it is set to expire. Some of the stories that are posted on Instagram are only visible for about a 24-hour period. And if those stories expire before the records are obtained, then that data is not kept.
And you had mentioned Meta, is that what used to be called Facebook?
Yes.
And when you request record, can you describe for the jury what's the process to get records from Instagram?
Sure. So in order to get the records from Instagram, there is a law enforcement portal for which law enforcement can request a preservation of an account. So that means that any data that is currently active or posted on that account will be preserved by the parent company Meta, and even if it is deleted off of the page of that user, if there is a preservation request in place, that data will be kept. It might not be present on the user's interface if it's deleted for others to see, but the company keeps it. And so a preservation request lasts for 90 days. So anything that was posted during that preservation request or posted before so that had not been deleted will be preserved by Meta at that time. And you have a 90-day window at that point that everything's preserved, and you have the option to extend it one time for an additional 90 days. Now, after a preservation request has been made, then a law enforcement officer would have to craft a search warrant outlining the probable cause needed to get that information, and they would have to specifically request the types of files and information that they would like to receive. Meta is only going to respond to what is requested for. So if you leave out that you want messages, direct messages between certain parties, then if that's not in the search warrant, then it won't be provided over. So you have to detail every piece of information that you would like.
Now, I want to unpack something. If you're working a case, you request Instagram records of John Doe. Is John Doe going to know that a preservation request was put on their Instagram account?
They will not.
And if records get sent, will they know that law enforcement has obtained their records?
Objection, Your Honor, cautious speculation.
Overruled.
So it depends. And the reason it depends is that you have, if there is a sealing order, so there's a packet that has to be reviewed and signed by the judge. So if a sealing order is included with that request and the judge reviews and signs the sealing order, or a non-disclosure order, that means that Meta or Facebook, Instagram, those will not notify. However, if that is not included, you will get a notification from Meta that those records are going to be turned over and the party will be notified.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions about Instagram itself. So, how does Instagram retain records? Is it by your name, your email, your address? How are those records kept?
I think it might be easier to explain if you have the records.
That sounds like a perfect idea. And Your Honor, before asking that, I wanted to introduce the following records pursuant to the certified business record exception. So, Your Honor, for the record, going to be introducing 2 November, and Your Honor, all of the business record certs are the preceding number and an R as in Romeo.
All right.
So 2 November, 2 November Alpha, 3 November, 3 November Alpha, 3 November Bravo, 4 and 5 November, 5 November Alpha, 6 November at this time, Your Honor.
All right.
And Your Honor, this would be admitted with objections as previously discussed.
All right, those are admitted, and the objections preserved. I need you to be on the mic, Mr. Harvey, so everybody can hear you.
Subject to our potential announcement earlier, Mr. Atkins and I, is that right?
I do not believe that will arise, or that will not arise at this current stage, Mr. Harvey.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Judge will submit also a written stipulation, just
great.
clarifying.
Thank you. All right.
I'm going to set these up at the witness stand, Your Honor. And Ms. Kyles, I want to ask you too, were you ever asked to review Instagram records related to the February 23rd, 2019 murder of Jamari Holmes?
Yes, I was.
And how did that come about? Who requested you to look through those?
I can't remember who exactly requested me to look through those. I believe it was the deputy of the gang unit at that time, who would have been Miss Kara Convery. At that time, I was on a special project where I was only reviewing Instagram records for unindicted murders. And they were prepping this case, and they asked me to review specifically some Instagram records that were returned as a part of this investigation.
Object to they correcting this case?
I don't think that really is here nor there. Overruled.
And what was the year that you began reviewing these records?
It would have been, I believe, end of summer, fall of 2021.
Okay. Now, I'm going to publish and ask you some questions to get back to what we were just discussing in what has been admitted as 2 November. It's going to populate. If you want, we have that Mondo board to your far right. That may be the easiest. So you request records from Instagram, you get some records back. Can you describe for the jury what is this target number at the top left? What does that pertain to?
Can you make it bigger on the screen?
I most certainly can. Oh, I don't know if I will keep asking questions, Your Honor. I don't know if the Mondo board is able to expand the window.
Can I expand it?
If you know how, most certainly. Thank you. So now that we can see it a lot better, thank you, Mr. Howes, can you describe what that target number indicates in Instagram records?
Sure. So if you see up top, it says service, which is because there's multiple companies underneath the Facebook. At this time, it was owned by Facebook. Instagram is the social media service that was requested. The target number right there, that is the specific account number that was associated with a vanity name or user ID. And the account number is going to be the account number assigned to that particular user. So when an Instagram account is created, Instagram automatically assigns a specific number to that account. And that number never changes, no matter how many times the username or vanity name may be changed. So that way, everything underneath a particular account is saved.
And Mr. Howes, do you see a old school wooden pointer near your feet up there? If you can keep that handy, we may use it momentarily. So going down this date range, what does that indicate in Instagram records?
So the 7/2/2019, that's the date that Instagram actually generated these documents that were reported. So generated, that's the date essentially that they made these records and then provided them sometimes after they had been sought. And you can see the exact time, which would have been 11:19 and 40 seconds, and that is UTC, which is Uniform Time Coordinated or Universal Coordinated Time, which is essentially the ground zero of world time. It's sometimes referred to as Greenwich Mean Time, because it's on the Greenwich Meridian, which is in London, which is where world banks all keep the zero time. So it never changes. If we are in Eastern Standard Time, then Eastern Standard Time is going to be 5 hours behind. If we're in Eastern Daylight Time, it's going to be 4 hours behind.
So with the time, if we were in February of 2019, would it be 5 hours or 4 hours?
In February, it would be 5 hours behind because February you're in daylight, or you're in Eastern Standard Time.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and publish to November. What is this, when you have name and the name provided? So is this, can you explain for the jury what this is, and is this verified by Instagram, or what can the name reflect?
So it might be easier if I explained vanity name first. If
Okay.
you could scroll down to vanity name.
Let's scroll down to the vanity name. So the vanity name for this account, what is the vanity name for this account?
Okay, so vanity name is going to be Slime Business Rod. What the vanity name is, that is the larger name that appears on the front of the user face of the Instagram profile. So that would also be known as, in Instagram, it would say they're at. If you were trying to tag them in an account, it would be at Slime Business Rod. Now, also, the way Instagram is set up, when it has name, so if you scroll back to where the name was.
Yes.
So right here, it says Cleveland Ave. So that is what would appear below the profile picture. The way I could describe it is if I was looking at Instagram this morning myself. I happened to be looking at the Barstool Sports page, and the president of Barstool Sports is Dave Portnoy. His vanity name is Stool Presidente, which you see above his picture, the big letters of his account. Just below his picture on that on the app, it's going to say Dave Portnoy.
And for this case, when you reviewed it, who was associated with the vanity name Slime Business Rod?
Slime Business Rod, the account associated with that would have been the account belonging to Rodelius Ryan.
Okay. Now, when you first got the case, was there any records from Slime Business Rod's account, that Instagram account?
What do you mean?
Was there ever any additional records requested from that Instagram handle?
Okay, so when I got the case, I reviewed 2 sets of Instagram records that were obtained during the course of this investigation. One of the records was obtained by the lead investigator who was investigating the homicide of Jamari Holmes, which was for a smaller window of time surrounding that particular investigation or homicide, what they knew based off of information they, I guess, discovered directly around the beginning times of the investigation. And then the second set of records that were obtained for Slime Business Rod were obtained by investigators in the district attorney's office that expanded the date ranges of the search warrant. So they contained, they did not contain exactly the same information, but the newer records have a more expanded set of data.
So getting back to Instagram and how the records come back, with that target number that we had, if someone were to change their vanity name or change the name that they have and you requested records, would Instagram be able to keep track of the account you're requesting?
Yes, will you pull that back?
Yes. Republishing to November.
So no matter how many, the where it says vanity name Slime Business Rod, that can be changed by any owner of the account whenever they want, and it would appear different to all the followers or whoever was able to view that Instagram profile. However, if you scroll to the top,
Yes.
the account number, that 294-6121951, that'll never change. Everything that is associated with that particular account will be saved under that number, regardless of how many times the vanity name or username is changed.
Now, I wanted to also ask you about, and let me show you one brief second. When you request records, I'm going to publish from 2 November, the index. So do you see this in the bottom? And I'm making it bigger. If you open up Instagram records and you go to the index, what do all of these blue highlighted, can you kind of walk through the jury of these?
I can, but will you go back to the business records first?
Yes.
It'll be much easier for them to follow if I. So this is a PDF that is generated every time the records are returned over. Every photo, every message, every group chat is going to be assigned a specific number. And in these business records, you're not always going to, because it's a PDF, you're not going to be able to have all of the actual media, like the larger picture files, the video files. And so it will have that associated picture number that is kept in the index in PDF format, but that's so you know exactly when that information was posted, and it can't be altered because of the way it's sent over in a PDF that is unable to be altered. When you go to the index, that is a digital file. So if you switch over to the index.
Publishing the index.
So that is going to be the actual digital file where the contents that were posted, where you can view them and they're stored. So like I said, you have to request specific information that you want returned from an account. And these are the areas that Instagram stores it. Direct shares, which would be like communications directly through the messaging between individuals. Direct stories, which are direct responses between individuals from the stories that are posted, messaging between those. It'll be a digital thing of their followers, the post they liked. If there was any live videos that went up during the time, this is where all of the digital media is stored. But that, again, like I said, that PDF is a document that will correlate with the numbers assigned to the digital media, so you will know when and where, or really when and what time every video was posted.
And in this index, are these, or are they not like hyperlinks where if you click them, it will take you to a separate page?
It will.
Now, turning back a little bit to Instagram records in general, can you tell the jury if Instagram ever captures, or can you video call on Instagram first? Can two Instagram users video one another through the app?
Oh, yeah. So, yes, Instagram can also be used as a direct communication platform where you can place telephone calls or video calls over the platform.
And if you were looking at records where someone used or received a video call, are you able to tell how long they spoke?
So these records were returned in 2019. Things have changed, the way Instagram stores and formats the return. But at the time, any sort of video calls between two individuals would only show up as a video call event. And you wouldn't be able to look at the length of the call as to the way Instagram was storing those records. What you got to keep in mind, though, is it's different from what you see on the interface of your phone or your account. But it would display as a date, time, video call event, and the two or more parties that were a part of that video call event.
Are you able to determine if that call was answered or not in these 2019 Instagram records?
No, not in those 2019 records.
And I wanted to ask you too, with Instagram records, do they keep any location data in 2019 of where someone was when they sent a message?
I don't know about location data. I do know that they maintained the IP address that was used the IP address for when the account was logged on and the message sent, that is saved. But I don't know about specific location data.
Now, in this specific case, other than the Instagram associated with Rodelius Ryan, what other Instagrams did you review?
I reviewed Instagram returns for Damone Blaylock, Tahiria Hartfield, Bernard Mitchell, and I believe Mariah. I can't remember Mariah's last name off the top of my head.
And when you reviewed these records, was there a specific time frame you were reviewing them for?
So yeah, when I was asked to review these records, I was asked to look at the time frame, the days before and right after the murder of Jamari Holmes. So really, during my initial review of these records, I kind of knew the names of the accounts that I was looking for, as well as the general dates. So I kind of focused from February 22nd, 2019 through about February 24th of 2019, just before and after the homicide of Jamari Holmes.
Now, I'm going to publish 3 November Alpha. It's going to come up on the screen. Now, what is the account for this Instagram?
At the time, it was, you see the account name or the target number that's assigned to it. It's going to be that 383-818-7897. Account name is One Lil Bali.
Who was associated with the account One Little Bali?
That would have been Damone Blaylock.
Did that name ever change, that vanity name in the records you reviewed?
Yeah, I believe it did. The vanity name, the vanity name associated with that changed to, I believe, a One King Doe.
Now, what was this Instagram we're looking at, the date range for this One Little Bali on 3 November Alpha?
This particular date range would have been for February 22nd, 2019 at 0 UTC. So that would start at 7 p.m. on the 21st of February 2019, and it went through, can you scroll over?
Yes.
It went through February 25th, 2019 at 23:59 UTC. So that would have been 6:59 p.m. and 59 seconds Eastern Standard Time on the 25th of February 2019.
And scrolling down, well, give me 1 second. I'm going to also publish now 3 November. There we go. Little technical difficulties. What was the...
Can you make that a little larger,
Yes,
please?
I most certainly can. What was the date range for this account?
That'd be October 10th, 2018, at 0 hours UTC through February 28th, 2019 at 23:59 hours.
Now, when you got this case to review, what was the date range of the initial Instagram that the lead detective had requested that you reviewed in general?
I think it was just the 2 days surrounding, 2 to 3 days surrounding the homicide of Jamari Holmes. I'd have to, you can pull the records up and I can see the exact range. I think it's the first one that I went over that you asked me about.
And when you, the additional records were requested by the DA's office, in general, what were the date ranges for those?
It would appear to be October 1st, 2018 through February 28th, 2019.
So it was a wider time frame?
Yeah.
Now, what was the Instagram handle and associated with Bernard Mitchell?
I believe it was 4L Little Joker.
I'm going to publish for you what's been marked or admitted as 4 November. And I'm going to scroll down to the vanity name. What's the vanity name? And I'm going to zoom this in that you see for this Instagram.
It is 4L dot Lil Joker.
And what is the name associated with this account?
The name associated with this account is Paper Drugs Extortion.
And what is the date range for this account?
This is going to be October 1st, 2018 through February 28th, 2019.
Now, when you were reviewing these records, did you have some initial records from Ms. Hartsfield?
So there was an account name that was given by Ms. Hartsfield that was Yo95Brazy. And then it was determined through other Instagram posts that she had a separate account by the name of What's Goin' One. It was, I think there was a one that was in there that was used in place of an I.
I'm going to publish what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5, November Alpha. It's going to come up on the screen here. What's the vanity name with this account?
It is What's Going One.
Is this the account you were just discussing that's associated with Ms. Hartsfield?
Yes.
Now, what I wanted to do was, and I'm going to publish State's Exhibit 3, November Alpha. When you want to find, can you describe for the jury how you go about finding or looking through if different Instagram handles are communicating with one another in these records?
So, okay, are you gonna?
I'm pulling it up now.
Okay, well, I'll start explaining. So, what I'll do is, once we've obtained those records and we know who they are, the target number or account number that is associated with each account, I will start looking at communications between those two account numbers. And what I do is, I will, let's say, for this particular case, I opened, I think I started with Mr. Blaylock's records. That's just where I started. I had to start somewhere. And I took the account number that was associated with Miss Hartsfield, and I just did Control F, search inside of the PDF of Mr. Blaylock's records, and it populated, and I was able to see all of the communications that were contained between those two parties inside of Mr. Blaylock's records. Because every time there's a communication between the two parties, that unique identifying number is stored next to it. So I would search it, and then I could just hit next throughout the search and go from message to message to message and read all of the communications between those two parties. After I do that, I would then do the reverse. I would go to Miss Hartsfield's records, and I would search Mr. Blaylock's information. And what you find doing that is that oftentimes one party may have deleted more of a conversation than the other party before a preservation request was put in place. So sometimes you can fill gaps and holes in conversations by searching each party's records for the other individual.
So let's walk through that using 3 November. So I'm going to publish 3 November now. And Mr. Howes, what is the vanity name with this Instagram we're going to be talking about?
It is One King Doe 1.
And is this the account that's associated with Mr. Blaylock?
It is.
So do you see at the top, typed in or searched, put what's going on? Do you see that?
So
can you describe that for the jury?
Well, I can see that. You need to switch to the other Instagram records from the original ones.
Okay, so I will open up what is marked as State's Exhibit 3 November Alpha. And what is the vanity name associated with this?
One Will Bali.
So if I were, and follow along here, type in what's going on. Do you see that 8-5?
8-5. What's going one?
Yes.
Yeah, I see that.
So
Okay. So that is going to be Miss Hartsfield's account. And if you see that number that is 9647422004, that is going to be the target ID that is associated with her account, and it's going to appear next to every communication that she has.
can you point that out for the jury where that would be? Now, if what's going on, so for the Instagram account for what's going on, would that number appear in the records?
What do you mean?
Would the Instagram return for what's going on have that same 2004?
Yeah.
And if these records appeared in Rodelius Ryan's records, Blaylock's records, whoever's, would that number follow it? For this account?
Whoever this account has communications with, it's that target number, that 9647422004, associated with Ms. Hartsfield's account, that's always going to show up in any communication she has in whoever's records it appears in.
Now, one brief, I'm going to go to, I'm publishing now page 155 of 3 November Alpha. So you get these records and you start looking through them. Can you describe for the jury, do you see at the top it says what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
And that one King Doe, is that associated with Blaylock's account?
Yes.
And this number next to him, is that the same as you just described for Ms. Hartsfield?
So what you're going to see here is that at the top of the account where it said the vanity name associated with it was One Lil Bali, after the Instagram records were requested, he changed his name to What's Going One. Or I'm sorry, changed his name to One King Doe One. And that 383-818-7897, that number did not change. That's the same number at the top of these records. So I know that Mr. Blaylock had changed his vanity name, but I still know it's the same account because of the number that's next to it. And what you have here is you see a text, and you see the author of that text is What's Going One, and the recipients are going to be both What's Going One and One King Doe One, Mr. Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield. Those are the only two people on this particular text thread. The time this text was sent was on 2/22/2019 at 2:05 UTC, and then what you see next is What's Poppin', WP. Another thing that is unique that Instagram does, and when I'm going through these messages, so every conversation thread, Instagram maintains a unique number called a thread ID. So the thread ID is this incredibly long number, and in this case, it ends in 171. So once I get to the message thread that I'm looking for, I was looking for conversations between Damone Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield in this case. Now I have found it. So what I will do afterwards is I will copy that thread ID and I will paste that thread ID in the search bar, and I can see every message included in that conversation. And the reason I did that in this case was because back in 2019, Instagram or Facebook would maintain messages in ascending order as to when they were sent and or received in that particular account. So what that meant was, if you were having a conversation with another individual, any messages sent by different parties would show up in between. And so if you scrolled all the way down, sometimes there would be gaps in the conversation between Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Blaylock because he sent or received messages from other parties. So once I have this thread ID, I could just search next and follow the entirety of their conversation without any interruption.
So I wanted to unpack a little bit of that. So you see how I have highlighted this thread ID?
Yes.
So if I copy this and then search this document, do you see where it?
I see.
And if I were to click these arrows, and I'm going to click it once, would this be, can you describe for the jury, is this how, or let me ask you this, is this how you track conversations looking at Instagram records from 2019 between two individuals?
Yes.
And if I were to keep scrolling through using this thread ID, would I eventually have all of the conversations between these two Instagram accounts in the records?
Yes, you would.
Now, if you and me have a Instagram thread and can you add or take away people from a thread? How would that impact the thread ID?
So if a new thread, let's say there's a new thread started that adds a third party onto here, so there's 3 people now involved in this messaging thread, there would be a unique thread ID number that was assigned to it. And so it's like a completely separate conversation. So this thread ID number is unique to the messages that only include Mr. Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield on the account.
And when you looked at this case, other than the interactions between the account associated with Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield, did you look at any other associations with the names you had provided?
So I looked for any communications between the accounts of Mr. Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield. I looked for communications between the accounts of Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Ryan. I looked for communications in the account between Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Mitchell. And I also looked for communications between Mr. Blaylock and Mr. Ryan directly to see if any of those parties were communicating with each other in and around the times before and after the murder of Mr. Holmes.
Now, did you ever find any connections in general between what you just described for the jury?
Yes, so there was Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Ryan maintained a line of communication with each other. Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Blaylock maintained a line of communication with each other, and Mr. Blaylock and Mr. Ryan maintained a line of communication with each other, and there was also a line of communication between Ms. Hartsfield as well as Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Mitchell.
And Mr. Howes, is Instagram records, when you were reviewing this, are they voluminous records?
So basically, to get to what I was tasked with doing, trying to follow a conversation in these massive amounts of records is very difficult. So what I did in this whole process was find the conversations between the parties that I was interested in, pulled those out of the Instagram records, and made a summary of those records in a format that was easily readable to myself and whoever would have been using that for the purpose of prosecuting this case.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
And Mr. Howes, I'm approaching you with what's been marked as 7 November, November, and 7 November, November, Alpha through Charlie. Let me know if you recognize these. Now, what are those, Mr. Howes?
Well, yes, I recognize all of those.
Okay. And what are they?
So 7 November, November would have been conversations between Bernard Mitchell and Rodelius Ryan, dating from February 22nd, 2019 through February 23rd, 2019. And they were just extracted out of their Instagram records and put into a format, like a summarization that's easy to read in a recognizable format.
Is that 7 November, November, Charlie, or 7 November, November?
This is 7 November, November.
Okay. And what is the next record? Yep. Yes, you may. Thank you. Now, Mr. Howes, can let me ask you a question. What are the two Instagram handles on 7 November, November?
One, King Doe 1 is in yellow. That denotes Mr. Blaylock's records. And in the purplish color is Slime Business Rod, notating the records of and communications with Rodelius Ryan.
Okay, so just a moment ago when you said Mr. Mitchell, did you mean Mr. Ryan?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did.
No. And for the other records, do you recognize them as summaries you created in this case? For 7 November, November, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie?
Yes, 7 November, November, Alpha is the records between Ms. Hartsfield and Rodelius Ryan. 7 November, November, Bravo are the records between Ms. Hartsfield and Mr. Blaylock. And then 7 November, November, Charlie are the records between Ms. Hartsfield and Bernard Mitchell.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of the summaries you created from reviewing the Instagram records in this case?
Yes, they're the exact conversation. The texts and times are the exact conversations as they appeared between the time frames listed from start to end as they appeared in the records.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to tender into evidence 7 November, November, and 7 November Alpha through Charlie.
All right, those are admitted.
Judge, these would be with the same objections previously discussed.
Understood.
Now, when you created these summaries, Mr. Howes, did you have to, with the steps we just walked through with the jury, is that how you created these?
Yeah, so if you pull the records back up real quick.
Yes. Republishing 3 November Alpha.
So once I discovered the unique thread IDs between each of the two parties that I was looking for, I then took all the messages, more or less starting on February 22nd, 2019 through February 23rd of 2019, and extracted those and put them in a much more easily accessible summary.
So I'm going to publish for you 7 November. One brief second. Publishing 7 November now.
Can you make it bigger too by hitting the little square box on the top right?
Yes.
Yeah, we expand the whole screen.
With
Or will this make it smaller?
that will make it smaller. Now, with this, is yellow the account associated with Blaylock and the purple Slime Business Rod the account associated with Ryan?
That is correct.
Okay. One. And do you have the times listed here in Eastern Standard Time or UTC time?
No, I wanted to make it an exact as it appeared in the Instagram records. So I maintained the times in UTC.
Okay. So I wanted to walk through some of these with you. And if you can use that pointer. So when you start here, it has February 22nd, 2019. What is the first time and message in this time frame you looked at between the account associated with Blaylock and the account associated with Ryan?
So this would have been at 1:39 and 38 seconds p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it just said, yo.
And after some back and forth, do you get to February 23rd, 2019?
I do. And I will say that I just chose February 22nd as a date that I was going to start for all of the communications between the parties I was looking at. So I wanted to include everything.
And with the messages that was the murder on February 23rd, 2019?
Yes.
And with that day, is this the first message on that day, February 23rd, 2019?
Yes. So it would have been coming from Blaylock to Ryan at 6:07:40 UTC, which is 1:07:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And what's the response back? Ryan says,
Blaylock says yo. A, and Ryan says yo. And then Blaylock asks, "Where you at?"
And when Ryan, have you ever heard of anywhere in Atlanta called the Ville?
Yes, I believe that's Mechanicsville.
And so, what time is it that the account associated with Rodelius Ryan says to Blaylock he's at the Ville?
6:38:25 UTC, which is going to be 1:38 in the morning.
Now, what is Blaylock's next message after that?
Blaylock asks, "Are you going to pick them up?"
Object to the characterization of what Blaylock says or Ann said.
Sustained.
And Your Honor, I'm going to object to just simply reading all the messages. The jury is able to read them. We don't need them read out loud. If there's a specific question about what's being said, I think that's appropriate. We don't need them read out
Your
loud.
Honor, the speaking of, okay. So Mr. Howes, let's walk through this for the jury, all right? So when you got these records, did you review any of the evidence in the case beforehand? Without saying what it is, but did you review the case file?
I reviewed the case file, and what I was looking to do was establish a timeline based off of these messages and associate it with the parties that I was looking into and get as close to the timeline leading up to the murder and afterwards as possible. And that's why the timestamps are on everything.
Okay. And Blaylock, he says you're going to pick them up to Ryan.
Correct.
What time does he send that message in Eastern Standard Time?
In Eastern Standard Time, it would have been 1:38 and 37 seconds a.m.
Now, scrolling to this next page, what is the message and time of the account associated with Rodelius Ryan respond?
Mr. Ryan says, I believe he meant to say hell no, but I think it was autocorrected or to heal no.
And what does he say after that? TXT then.
So at 6:40, 34, it says text them. Oh, sorry, it's 6:40:21, which would have been 1:40 a.m. It says text them, tell them I'm
Going to object to the interpretations of the words. Has to be restricted to what's on the exhibit.
Your Honor, I can lay a little bit of foundation.
All right.
So, Mr. Howes, how many Instagram records did you say you've reviewed in your time in the DA's office?
over 300.
Have you ever seen TXT before in those records you've reviewed?
In those records I've reviewed, as well as shorthand for other texts that I've personally received.
And have you ever seen TXT used for a shorthand for text?
I have.
Okay. Now, with any of these, you don't know what any of the senders intended in their minds, right?
No.
Okay. So, what is after the account associated with Ryan text Blaylock text them? What does he say right after that?
Tell them I'm outside.
And does Blaylock give any kind of confirmation?
Yes. At about 1:40, 59 seconds, Blaylock responds, "Aight."
Now, okay, I'm going to go to 4 minutes later at 6:44:26. What does the account with Ryan respond back?
It says what they say.
And 20 or so seconds after that, what does the account associated with Blaylock say back?
Let me call them now.
And then after this, after let me call them now, what is Ryan's response?
At 6:44:26 UTC, which is again is 1:44 a.m., Ryan responds, "Aight."
Okay. Now, and then is there a video call event after that?
I believe there's at least 2 video call events. Yes.
And for these video call events, if they're on the left-hand side, does this mean that the account associated with Blaylock is calling Mr. Ryan or the reverse?
So it means it would have been Blaylock the way because it's yellow, associated with the yellow account. That bubble, it would have been Mr. Blaylock attempting to call well, I don't know if it was an attempted call or a successful call. I just know that there was a video call event. I can't tell you if they spoke, how long they spoke, or what, but there was 2 of them in short succession.
So turning to the next page, is there a sequence of video call events initiated from the account associated with Mr. Ryan to Blaylock?
Yes, between 7:04:07 and 7:05:28, there's video call events.
And after that last video call by the account associated with Blaylock, what is this back and forth response?
It says, Blaylock says, "What's up?" And then Ryan's response to Blaylock is, "Open the door," which would have been at 7:06:21 UTC, which is 2:06 a.m. and 21 seconds. So that was, Ryan asking Blaylock to open the door, and he says, "All right."
Okay. Now, after that message at 2:06:21 Eastern Time, or 2:06:26, where Blaylock says, "All right," where my cursor, that bottom left on the screen, when is the next communication between the Instagram accounts associated with Blaylock and Ryan?
It would have been a video call event at 10:11:06 UTC, which would have been 5:11:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Roughly speaking, how long is that gap?
Between, it would have been, sorry. 7:06 to, it would have been just over 3 hours.
Just over 3 hours?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to, Ms. Knight's going to assist me. I wanted to publish what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 1, November. And if you scroll down just a little, no, thank you, Ms. Knight. What time was this 1 November received? Mr. Howes.
The E911 call was received at 4:36 a.m.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. So after you look through the Instagram messages between the account associated with Ryan and Blaylock, did you turn to any other of the Instagrams that you looked at in that same time frame?
So I went through this process, yes, and and extracted all the conversations between the parties we talked about, these 4 different conversations, for the same time frame. And the other one that I went to next, after digesting what this conversation said,
Yes.
was the conversation between Mr. Mr. Ryan and Ms. Hartsfield.
Okay. I'm going to publish for you and the jury 7 November Alpha. And this is between the accounts associated with Rodelius Ryan and Ms. Hartsfield?
That is correct.
So as we zoom in here, I wanted to walk through this, starting with, so this first conversation, did you look back a little bit before February 23rd, 2019 when you started?
So again, my intent was to start at, I just picked February 22nd as the date that I was going to extract all these conversations out to summarize. That was the day before the murder. And so I started anything that was in UTC time on February 22nd, 2019 in those Instagram records, I extracted as part of this summary.
And for this summary, is the light pink what's going on the account associated with Ms. Hartsfield?
Yes, that would be Ms. Hartsfield.
And is it the same purple color for the account Slime Business Rod associated with Ryan?
That is correct.
Okay. So can you break down for the jury where you started, what's the first message from the account associated with Ms. Hartsfield?
First message was at 6:29:46 UTC on February 22nd, 2019, which would have been 1:29:46 a.m. And she asked, "Where you at?" And the response shortly thereafter at 6:30:20 UTC was, "Believeland, what's up? Where you at?"
And what did she respond back to?
She responds, "The Ville," and then what that mean.
I'm going to pick this.
Sure.
One brief second, Your Honor. Republishing 7 November Alpha. And this is all on February 22nd, 2019?
Correct?
And what is the time frame for this on the 22nd of February?
The original messaging started at 6:29:46 UTC, which is 1:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And then
Going to February 22nd, 2019, is this the early morning hours of the day before?
no, that would have been the early morning hours of February 22nd, 2019. Yeah.
Okay. And how does this start here with the message associated with Ryan?
This message that you have highlighted says, "For what?" And the response from Ms. Hartsfield is, Bali said, "Come, take him to the store," and Ms. Hartsfield has replaced the C and come with a K.
And one of the vanity names for the account associated with Blaylock was Little Bali 1, is that right?
That is correct.
And then what is the next sequence of responses between the account associated with Ms. Hartsfield and the account associated with Mr. Ryan?
Will you highlight where you want me to?
Yes, starting right here.
So it says, "In what you mean?" ? And then the response from Mr. Ryan is, "Bali in the bill." And the response from Ms. Hartsfield is, "No, he at home." And there is a laughing emoji sent by Mr. Ryan. And then during this exchange at 6:41:07 UTC, there is a video call event. And then a message from Ms. Hartsfield that states, "Why that face?" And the C again has been replaced with an X. And then
going a little bit further, is there a series of video calls from the account associated with Ryan to the account associated with Ms. Hartsfield?
yes, there are.
And can you describe for the jury, so you have this message at 7:55:08. Is that still February 22nd?
That is.
And Ryan says, what's the address?
That's correct.
And then on this summary, is this now in Eastern Standard Time switching over to February 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the first message on February 23rd between the account associated with Blaylock and Hartsfield?
So Blaylock says to Hartsfield at 5:41:19, which would be 12:40, or that's UTC, the 5:41. It's going to be 12:41 a.m. He says, "Yo, where you at?" And Ms. Hartsfield's response is the Ville, which is the Mechanicsville neighborhood.
And then is there a series of 2 video calls initiated from the account associated with Hartsfield to the account associated with Blaylock? I mean with Ryan.
I believe it's actually a series of 4 video calls. If you continue scrolling to the next page, you'll see 2 more.
And what's the time of this last video call initiated between the Hartsfield and Ryan?
At 5:51:57 UTC, which is 12:51 a.m., Ms. Hartsfield initiates a video call event, and then about 5 minutes later at 5:56:07 UTC or 12:56 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mr. Ryan initiates 2 video call events in short succession. And then there are 2 more video call events initiated by Ms. Hartsfield. And then at 6:01, they, or Ms. Hartsfield initiates a video call. That's going to be 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is the last video call event. And then at 1:01:28 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ms. Hartsfield sends an address to Mr. Ryan that says 709 Windsor Street, which is actually an address inside the Mechanicsville community.
Now, she sends that address at 1:01:28 Eastern Standard Time?
Yes.
And then what is this next message from with Ryan?
So it says, it says open the door, which would have been at 1:34 a.m. and 45 seconds, or 6:34:45. And so when I was reviewing these text messages, trying to get a timeline of events, that's when I realized that at the same time, Rodalius Ryan is telling Ms. Hartsfield to open the door. Rodalius Ryan was simultaneously texting Damone Blaylock saying, call the girls or tell them to open the door.
When, Mr. House, so leaving 1:34 p.m., open the door text, I'm going to...
AM.
I'm going to go back to 7 November, and go to...
There you go. See?
this 1:40:34.
Yeah.
And can you describe for the jury how these two correlate with one
this
another?
is the conversation between Rodalius Ryan and Damone Blaylock. And Rodalius Ryan is texting Damone Blaylock saying, tell him I'm outside. Now, during the more or less within a minute of that text, he is also texting Tyria Hartfield saying, open the door.
And then picking back up on 7 November Alpha, after this open the door, is there a sequence of video call events from the account associated with Ryan to Hartsfield?
So between the open the door text was sent at 6:34:45 UTC, which would have been 1:34:45 a.m. So between 6:35:22 UTC, which is 1:35 a.m., and 6:39:47, which is 1:39:47 a.m., there are 9 video call events that appear to be initiated by Mr. Ryan trying to call Ms. Hartsfield. And after the 9th call, Mr. Rodalius Ryan sends another message to Ms. Hartsfield that says, open the door. At 6:17 UTC or 1:40 a.m., another video call event is initiated, and about 30 seconds later at 6:40:51, Mr. Ryan sends a message to Ms. Hartsfield that says, "So you ain't gonna open the door?" And then at 6:46:45 UTC, or 1:46:45 a.m., Ms. Hartsfield responds, "Where ya at?" And then at 6:49:08 UTC, which is 1:49:08 a.m., the response from Mr. Ryan is outside. And that was the last communication between Rodelius Ryan and Ms. Hartsfield for the date of February 23rd, 2019. That was the last communication between those two parties.
And what's this last message? What's the date and time of that?
On February 24th, 2019?
Correct.
The last message on February 24th, 2019, it says, "What you doing, love?" And it has a, I think it's a laughing face emoji.
Now, after looking at this Instagram in this time frame from Hartsfield's account and Ryan's account, was there any communication between Blaylock's account and Hartsfield?
Yes, there was.
I'm going to publish what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 7 November Bravo. And for this is Ms. Hartsfield's account in light pink and 1 King Doe 1 in yellow.
Yes, so light pink, Let's Go in 1, Ms. Hartsfield. Yellow, 1 King Doe 1. That would be Mr. Blaylock.
And this first back and forth, is this February 22nd, 2019?
So it is. Keep in mind, though, that I just was using UTC time. And so the 1:59:07 UTC on February 22nd, 2019 is actually going to be 8 p.m., just before the 9 o'clock hour Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. And they have some back and forth on February 22nd, 2019, right?
Correct.
Okay. Getting to February 23rd, 2019, what is this message, or what time is this message WYA in Eastern Standard Time at the top of page 2?
On February 23rd or 22nd?
February 22nd.
February 22nd, it is, that last where you at is 23:27:01. That's going to be, now I'm going to have to do,
It's going to be 11 minus 5 hours?
yes. Okay. So about 6:27:01.
Okay. Now, turning to February 23, 2019, what is this? Is there a series of video call events? What's the timeline of these?
So on February 23rd, 2019, Ms. Hartsfield initiates a video call event at 5:52:08 UTC, which would have been 12:52 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And there are between 5:52:08 UTC and 6:09:58. So that's going to be 12:52 a.m. till 1:09 a.m. There are 6 different video call events initiated by Ms. Hartsfield directed towards Mr. Blaylock.
And after that, is there some video calls initiated? What's the time of this first video call that Blaylock initiates to Hartsfield's account?
So at 6:41:03 and again at 6:41:07, which is 1:41 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mr. Blaylock initiates 2 video call events going to towards Miss Hartsfield. Sorry.
And what is this text after that?
So at 6:41:15 UTC, Blaylock texts Miss Hartsfield and states, "Lil Rod says say he outside."
So when looking at the messages that Hartsfield's having with Ryan and Blaylock and Ryan and Blaylock's own conversation, do you see any kind of pattern between those three?
Yeah, they were all having conversations with each other independently of the others around the same time. So when Mr. Ryan was trying to get Ms. Hartsfield to answer, he was also texting Mr. Blaylock to have Ms. Hartsfield do the same thing.
I'm going to object to testimony about what someone was doing.
Sustained.
So, Mr. Howes, when you're speaking, you can say, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you say Mr. Atkins' account texted Mr. Howes' account, is this the account associated with you or I? Or in this example, Hartsfield and Blaylock?
What you can see from these records is that in the message is between Mr. Ryan and Ms. Hartsfield. Mr. Ryan then that account texts Ms. Hartsfield and states, "I'm outside." And then if you go to the next message thread at the same time, you can see that Mr. Ryan texts Mr. Blaylock and says, "Tell them I'm outside." And then if you go to the conversation between Mr. Blaylock and Ms. Hartsfield, you can see Mr. Blaylock telling Ms. Hartsfield in an independent conversation that Lil Rod say he outside.
Now, after Little Rod says he's outside, the message from the account associated with Blaylock to Hartsfield, when is the next communication between Blaylock's Instagram and Hartsfield's Instagram?
The next Instagram communication is at 10:11:37 UTC, which would have been 5:11 a.m. And there are at 10:11:37 a.m. and 10:11:55. I'm crossing myself up. 10:11:37 UTC and 10:11:55 UTC. There are 2 Instagram video call initiations from Blaylock to Ms. Hartsfield.
So from 1:41 a.m. with this text, there's a gap until these video calls at 5:11 a.m. on February 23rd?
That's correct.
Okay. And then is there some additional video call events a few minutes later from the Instagram account associated with Ms. Hartsfield to Blaylock?
Yeah, Ms. Hartsfield says, initiates at 10:14:35 UTC and 10:15:04 UTC video call events directed towards Mr. Blaylock.
And in reviewing Instagram records, have you ever seen a short phrase of DF?
Yeah, it's an acronym for DeFuck.
And so this last message, what's the time of this?
At 10:15:05 UTC, which is 5:15:05 a.m., Miss Hartsfield says to Mr. Blaylock, "Where the fuck you at?"
And does he have any response to that message?
Yes, Mr. Blaylock liked the message where the fuck you at that was sent by Miss Hartsfield.
And then is there a series of video calls from, how many video calls are there after that from the Instagram account associated with Hartsfield to Blaylock?
Between 10:15:13 UTC and 10:16:37 UTC, there are a series of 4 Instagram video call events initiated by Miss Hartsfield towards Mr. Blaylock. So that would be 5:15:13 a.m. to 5:16:37 a.m.
Now, once you reviewed and looked at the communication between the Instagram accounts of Blaylock, Ryan, and Ms. Hartsfield, did you ever look at this same time frame with any Instagram messages associated with Bernard Mitchell's Instagram account?
Yes.
And did Bernard Mitchell have any communication with anyone in this window that of the records you were looking at?
So of the records that I look at, I did find communications between Bernard Mitchell as well as Miss Hartsfield.
Publishing what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 7, November, Charlie. So, did you pull some messages before February 23rd?
Yeah, so there was not quite as many messages between Miss Hartsfield and Mr. Mitchell as there were between her and the other individuals. So I included a little bit longer of a date range for the messages between Bernard Mitchell and Tyria Hartsfield.
And 4L1 Joker in blue is the account associated with Bernard Mitchell?
Yeah, I believe it's 4L.Lil Joker.
And this is the same What's Going On associated with Miss Hartsfield?
That is correct.
And in terms of February 23rd, what is the first message that you have?
8:40:27 UTC, which would have been 3:40:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Miss Hartsfield sends a message to Mr. Mitchell that says, "Pull up for real."
So these first 3 summaries we walked through was around 1:40 a.m., a time we were just talking about, between Blaylock, Ryan, and Hartsfield's Instagram accounts.
Correct.
Is this roughly 2 hours after that?
Yes.
And what does the account from Mr. Mitchell respond back to from this message that Hartsfield's account sends around 3:40 on February 23rd a.m.?
Response is, where you at?
And then is this showing video call events after that from Hartsfield's account to Mitchell's?
Yes, it shows that Ms. Hartsfield at 8:54:30 UTC and 8:54:31 UTC, which would be 3:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, there are 2 back-to-back video call events initiated from Ms. Hartsfield to Bernard Mitchell.
And then what's these 2 messages here that you see?
At 8:54:35, which is again 3:54 a.m., Ms. Hartsfield says, "Where you at? On the way." And then at 8:59:28, which would be 3:59 a.m., Ms. Hartsfield says to Mr. Mitchell, "Where you at? Da fuck."
And what is Mr. Mitchell's response?
His response is he sends two messages within 13 seconds just after 9 o'clock UTC or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And those two messages are, "Bye, Crystal, send Addie." And Ms. Hartsfield responds at 9:03 UTC, which is 4:03 a.m. Okay, I'm getting it.
Okay, hold on one second. So did you know where the incident location was for the February 23rd, 2019 Jamari Holmes murder?
The homicide?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at 50 Mount Zion.
And what part of the city is that address?
What do you mean?
What area of Atlanta is 50 Mount Zion?
It's like the south side. It's over like by Cleveland Ave.
Do you have some familiarity with that location, that area?
Some.
Do you know if there is a Crystals in that near 50 Mount Zion Road?
I don't.
Okay. And have you ever seen a short term, when someone says send ADDY, what have you seen that mean in other contexts?
Send Addie, address.
Okay. And then what is Miss Hartsfield's response?
85 Mount Zion. And I do have the familiarity with, that is a apartment complex that is diagonal from 50 Mount Zion, just on the other side of the street.
Can you walk between those two apartment complexes in a short span of time?
If you wanted to. I couldn't tell you how long it would take, but yeah, they're kind of catty corner to each other.
And so what time is this message sent of 85 Mount Zion by the account associated with Hartsfield to Mitchell?
9:05:26 UTC, which would have been 4:05 a.m. and 26 seconds Eastern Standard Time.
And in this time where Hartsfield's account, where we're at, 4:05 a.m., is there any communication in the Instagram records between the accounts of Blaylock, Ryan, or Hartsfield with each other?
At the 4 a.m. marker?
Correct.
Right there? I don't believe so.
Okay.
Let me ask you, just to interrupt, scheduling wise, how much longer do you expect the direct with this witness to be?
Your Honor, I would say about an hour or a
Okay,
little
let's
bit
break for
past
lunch.
that. Yes, Your Honor.
And I will have y'all come back at 1:30, please.
All right, thank you. Where do you want these exhibits?
You can leave them up there for right now. Thank you.
All right, I just forwarded through Ms. Persifield. I think you may have gotten a second attempt at a limiter, but I just sent to her, and she'll send to you a third one. So use that one, and then I'd love for us to discuss that before we return with the jury. So you anticipate it'll be this witness, and then do you think we'll get to, I guess, Mitchell and Otten or Uten today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you think we'll get past those two?
If we do, Your Honor, I don't believe we would get past Detective Hogan,
Okay,
which would mean we would not need that instruction.
until tomorrow.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, considering that some of the people have some other things to do during the lunch break. Why don't we just be back at 1:25, and then maybe in the morning or in the evening, this evening, we'll deal with the limiter. Okay, see y'all at 1:25.